D.
D, deteriorated?
Yeah.
Well, I think the same problem. Always one step down. Who agrees? Okay, we have a majority. 225, I think is the safe number? Yeah, it starts with 225. Is everybody in the right place now? Okay. 1 is D. You know who's next?
Tabby.
Tabby?
D.
D, do we agree?
Yeah.
Anyone else says D? Max, you say D too? Okay, we have 3. If you agree, do something kind of visible that I can see. Nodding your head is okay too, as long as it's a big nod. If I don't see it, we take too long and just waste time. Number 3. Tabby, who's next? Max? B. Agree? Okay. Number 4. Who's next? Okay, Dustin?
B.
B. Agree? Okay. C. Agree? How many C's is that? Agree? It's a majority, but it is wrong. So let's take a look at this. Well, yeah, how do we know it's A? Alright, well, so what does dormant mean? Usually it means sleeping. So then we get this procedure is anything but. We think it's probably going to mean something similar, actually. Right? Because that's why it's a surprise. We also know that our 2 words here are going to be opposites. Kind of. Right? Something like relaxing versus something that's active. So, yeah, A is the best fit when we plug it in. Great. Number 6 stays on Hannah. B? How many B's? It's the majority. That's right. Number 7? Who's next? Justin? You can't pick the person who picked you. Anyone else? Write everyone's names? It doesn't really matter. Let's start the cycle again. We know.
Number 7, right?
Yeah.
E.
E, agree? Okay, it's a majority. That's right. What does irreproachable mean?
Like, undoable.
Always perfect. Like, almost perfect.
Kind of. Close to that. Like, it can't be reproached. Reproach means criticized or something like that. So, you can't find any fault with it. Alright, number 8, who's going to answer for us?
Justin.
Okay.
A.
A, do we agree? Apparently we don't. What else do we have?
E.
E. We talked about this. Didn't this term come up last time? Or a few times ago? What does it mean to coin a word?
Create.
To create or invent this term. Alright, moving on to the next section, Justin. What do you have for number 9?
A.
A, do we agree?
D.
2D. Anyone else? 2Ds, 2As? We're going to need to go over this, I think. Read the question for it. Well, don't read the question. It's about just a simple word. Readopt it. But we do need to read the context, right? So let's take a look at that. Can you read, Justin, from the first sentence?
In 1856, when the 3 Ronin sisters hoping for qualifications and conversions to nurses, Eli and Joan State adopted masculine
Pseudonyms.
calling themselves her, Alice, and F.
Okay, do we know what pseudonyms are? I bet we can guess based on the context here. They adopted pseudonyms calling themselves. It's a bunch of girls, sisters, who adopted masculine pseudonyms, and they call themselves Kerr, Ellis, and Acton Bell.
Fake writer.
Yeah, and that's actually what it means. It means a fake writer's name. Okay, so they adopted fake names. What would we want to plug in? What kind of word? Don't look at your answer choices yet. You want to make a prediction. If you were to fill this in without looking at the answer choices, what would you say?
They took.
Yeah, probably, right? They took, they used, something like that. Do we know what word here means something like that? Okay, so there's the problem. Alright, the actual answer is C, assumed. And this is probably not the most common definition of assumed. When you hear assumed, you're like, oh, I assumed the answer was A, but I was wrong. Alright, that's the most common definition of assumed. But assume can also mean to take on. You could assume a role or assume a name, something like that. It means to take it on. Alright, moving on, I guess, to question number 10. Justin, what do you have?
B.
B, do we agree?
E.
How many, any other E's, any other B's? I got 2 B's, 2 E's.
D.
D. We're going to need to go over this one too. Justin, read the question for us.
The passage suggests that the Brahms' decision to use masculine students was.
Okay. Well, what do we know about this from this passage? Why did they do it? Why did they adopt these masculine pseudonyms? It's not a very long paragraph. We should be able to find this.
They knew the prejudice they would face.
Yeah, if they were to use their own names, if they were to publish books publicly as women, maybe people wouldn't treat them very well, or they wouldn't want to read their books. So, what can we tell about their decision to use these pseudonyms?
Justified.
Yeah, this was justified. They had to do this. If they didn't, they would have experienced prejudice.
It says the masculine disguise was unnecessary.
Well, it says strictly speaking, but if you move on, strictly speaking means like literally, like by law they are allowed to publish books as women. Women writers have been published before, but if you look further on, it says, however. So be careful. Even I understand your point. Like it says, strictly speaking, like in reality they could have published it as women, but they would have faced a lot of prejudice. So I think that's still enough to say that their decision is justified. Moving on to question number 11. Justin, what do you have? D or C? D? We're going with D. Do we agree? How many Ds? I got enough Ds. It's a majority. It's right. Who's next?
Max.
Max, what do we have? B? Do we agree? How many B's? It's 3? Okay, but B is not the right answer, so we need to take a look at the question again. Max, read it for us.
Conclusion of the passage suggests that the giant squid.
Okay. Well, what can we infer? Maybe we have to actually just start reading this and see what we can get. So Max, read for us from line 10. Marine biologists.
Marine biologists have long dreamed of observing these reputedly lethargic creatures of the deep in their native habitat.
What are these reputedly lethargic creatures that we're talking about? The giant squids. You know what lethargic means?
Lazy.
Yeah, lazy. What about reputedly?
Argue.
No, it means like sort of by like reputation. Right, so they're rumored to be really lethargic, but then, keep reading, now a team of
Japanese scientists has managed to film a giant squid aggressively attacking its prey at a depth of 3,000 feet.
Okay, so what is this squid doing on the video?
Attacking its prey.
Is that very lethargic? It's doing it aggressively too. What's our answer? Yeah. We need to justify why any other answer is wrong. Okay, let's move on. Taking a look at, well, question number 13. Max, what do you have?
D.
D? Do we agree? Okay, a few of us are nodding our heads. That's right. I feel like we can probably get that from the context even. Alright, take a look at number 14. Max, who's next?
Yeah.
Okay.
D.
D? Agree? We got one person nodding their head. What else do we have?
E.
D?
E.
E? Any other E's? 2 D's, 2 E's, 3 E's. The majority is wrong. Alright, so let's take a look at this question anyways. You read it for us?
It can be inferred from lines 10 to 25 that the reason for the Marine's sudden departure from the ice has to do with.
Alright, so I already told you that the majority is wrong. If the majority had been right, we wouldn't be going over this question right now. Could the minority be right? If we say our answer is D, what clues do we have?
Like second class.
The second to last in the paragraph?
No. Like second class railway carriage.
Okay, so this is one clue. We see that they suddenly cram into this second class railway carriage. Sadie, we can never tell where they would go. Also, what do we know about the place they moved to in Paris?
Like a small.
It says
furnished
small,
apartment.
4th floor in a third-rate avenue. What do you think third-rate means?
Low.
Yeah, lower class, right? Being on the floor at this time was probably not good. 4th floor because they didn't have elevators, so... they're not living in a very nice place. They have to rush away on kind of a cheap trip. You can imagine this is probably for financial reasons. Alright, moving on to question 15. You got it right, so you can pick the next person.
Tabby.
Tabby, what do we have? D? Do we agree? Anything else? I got 2 D's. Max, what do you have? Also D? Forgot babies. Okay, D is right. Good. This actually relates to the question that we just talked about anyways. Alright, moving on to question number 16. Tabby, who's next? Justin. C. Who agrees? That's the majority. It's right. Pass it on. Hannah? 17?
A.
A. Do we agree? What else do we have?
C.
C.
The majority is right. You can answer again. What do you have for 18? E. Do we agree? I see Young shaking her head. Anybody else have an E? What else do we have then?
D.
C.
Okay, we have a variety of answers. We need to look at this one. Will you read the question for us, Hannah?
Statement that the deficiencies of his own wardrobe were trapped up themselves serves to.
Okay. Well, so first of all, what is a wardrobe?
Clothes.
Yeah, it's clothes. And deficiencies? What do we know about his clothes? What are deficiencies? Yeah, like lackingness, like something bad about his clothes. So that's a, sort of a hint in one direction. Yeah, what does that imply? What answer matches that idea best? Something about his clothes not being very good.
Disreputable state.
Yeah, disreputable state is kind of trashy. His clothes are in bad condition. It's that makes it maybe a little challenging. So E is our answer, and I think Hanny got that right. So you can pick the person who's going to answer the next question. Okay. E. Do we agree? Few people shaking their heads. It's right. Pass it on.
Max.
Max 20.
D.
D. Do we agree? What else do we have? Any other B's? We got 2 B's. Justin, what do you get?
C.
Hannah? Alright, we don't have a majority, we need to go over this, so let's take a look at it. Max, can you read the question?
As described in lines 41 to 67, this is Maureen's approach toward Maureen and speech practice.
Alright, whatever your answer is, I'd like you to skim over these lines. There's only 25 lines, it's like a paragraph, and I'd like you to try to find some support for your answer. If you think you can find support for your answer, raise your hand, we'll take a look at it and see if it matches.
She was logical.
Where do we see this? What line are we looking at?
65.
Okay, so yeah, we could take a look at line 65, the last sentence of the paragraph. You read that for us, maybe? Her position?
Her position was logical enough. Those members of her family who did show had to be showy.
Okay, so what does that say? What do you think it really means by showy in this case? And logical, I mean, what of our answers, does logical relate to any of these things?
Pragmatic.
Okay, yeah, so that does seem similar to pragmatic. Fond? Can we get that? Well, what about the first sentence? Justin, read the first sentence in our, or who was answering this question originally? It's Max. Let's read the first sentence in our paragraph. Morgan was?
Morgan was due to his mother.
What about that? That can show fond. Right, so cares about a child, but also very practical. Fine. Our answer is B.
Isn't that Morgan to his mother, not Morgan?
Right, Morgan was dear to his mother means the mom thinks that Morgan is dear. So she loves him, basically. That's what that means. Alright, so let's take a look at 21. Max, what do you have?
D.
D. Do we agree? It's the majority and it's right. 22.
Let's do
D.
D. Do we agree? It's the majority and it's right. Tabby? A. Do we agree? It's 2. Can I get another? What else do we have? 3 of us said no. Hannah, what do you have? D? E? Nina?
C.
C? Max?
Very good.
We don't have an answer for this question. It's asking us about the word smart in line 93, right? So let's take a look at this. Tabby, can you read that original sentence for us?
Logan wouldn't be taken for young tuition with a tutor. He wasn't smart. Or he might cause first companions simply wouldn't fit.
Okay, so it's talking about these two people walking around, Morgan and the tutor, but they wouldn't be they wouldn't think he's a tutor because he doesn't seem smart enough based on what people see. So that's actually one hint. Another hint we have is what is it talking about in the previous sentence? What is it that Pemberton is worrying about?
Suspected case of
Earlier on, yeah. So I think we have to backtrack all the way back up to like 83 to really get this this question. Maybe from like line 80. Well, maybe it's actually a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit below her. Come to think of it. Hold on a second. Let me actually find the line. Well, actually, the hint I think is actually what we were talking about. Do you remember what our answer was for question number 18? Yeah, it was E. Exactly, right? So what do we know about the way Pemberton looks?
not good.
Yeah, okay, so when he's worried about not looking smart enough, that's a big hint because he's been worrying about his clothes more previously in the paragraph. Right, so that's actually a hint. What is our answer? Yeah. Alright, and smart is actually often used to mean fashionable, especially in like older literature. It was a common usage of the word. Alright, anyways, moving on to question number 24. Who's just answering? Tabby, what do you have? E? Do we agree? How many E's? 1. Any other E's? What else do we have?
C.
Any other C's?
D.
Okay, we don't have a majority officially, so we can go over it. Tabby, read the question for us.
An aspect of Pemberton's character that is made particularly clear in the final paragraph is
Well, what can we say about this based on what we've seen? What clues do we have? Right? The last paragraph is not that long. I mean, it's kind of long. Right? But still, it's a limited place to look. What clues do we have? I think we could use one clue as a sentence we were just talking about. What's he thinking about as he walks?
He's worried about his appearance.
What are people going to think about us? Who are they going to think we are? I don't look smart enough to be the tutor. So that's a big hint that what is our answer?
C.
Exactly. He's worrying about what other people think, only what your job is. Alright, enough on that. Anyone get a perfect score in that section? No. Alright, well anyways, let's move on to the next one. Number 1. I think it stays on Tabby, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you have for 1?
C.
Do we agree? 2 people say C. Any other voices? What else do we have? Max?
Didn't get to do that.
You didn't get to do it? Did this whole section or just this problem? The whole section? Alright. Who else didn't? Tabby, you said you did.
No, I did this, but I didn't do the next.
You didn't do the third one. So you did the second one. Max, this is as far as you got. Alright. Just stay tuned and try to mark down the answers as you go and try to look over them later and ask questions. Right, so we cannot call on Max anymore. We don't have a majority on this question, but we have to maybe talk about these 2 words, what they mean. Do we know what diluted means?
It's like salt.
Add water.
Yeah, usually, right? So it's like made less, usually to make something like weaker, like so if you dilute a drink, like if you pour water into your orange juice, you are diluting your orange juice because it's not as pure anymore. It's mixing it with something else. Right, you might see that in chemistry also. Corrosive?
And it
Yeah, it eats away at like metal. So which one fits better here? Yeah, D fits better. Right, especially with this idea that it's turning them into rusty mush, making them corrode. Alright, moving on to question number 2. What do we have?
Is it D?
I don't know. Is it D? What do we think? Justin thinks it's D also. Anyone else think it's D? Alright, we don't have a majority on this question clearly, so let's just take a look at it. Can you read it? Read it with D plugged in. Take your answer and see if it's right.
Although the book might not start giving hardcore fans, it is unified by its monotonous citations and its acronyms.
Okay, well, do we know what monotonous means?
Boring.
Uh-huh. Okay, so do we think unified by boring citations is going to make sense?
Yeah, you know.
It's a little strange, right? Marred? Well, what does marred mean?
Damage.
Scarred or damaged? Could it be scarred or damaged by negative, this monotonous, boring citations? What about slipshod style? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Negative thing, so it fits with the and transition that we have. Slipshod is kind of careless.
What does slipshod mean?
Kind of careless, not very well organized. Alright, let's move on to the next question. What do we have? B. Do we agree? Majority says B and it's right. Happy, who's next?
C.
And it says C. Do we agree? Majority says C and it's right.
So marking it like the two.
Yeah. Yeah, it means like strict, authoritative.
C.
Do we agree? The one other C. That's not a majority. What is a monolith? What does mono usually mean? This is important. One. A monolith, so it's like one big thing. That's all the same. One big thing. Does that fit in this case? Yeah, we have contrast. It's not a monolith, but a rich mixture of all these different things together. So, C is our answer. Alright, moving on to the next one.
B.
B. Any other B's? One other B. We're going to need to look at it anyway. So we're asking about the word engaged in line 3. Can you read a sentence for us? This question has...
This question has engaged critics for centuries, with some supporting the
It's probably enough, right? This is a question that is engaging critics. So what do you think they're doing? Well, if we had to make our own word. If we had to make our own word by looking at the answer choices.
Bringing in...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe bringing them in or interested in them or like making them think about it. Something related to that. What answer choice would best match that? Yeah, absorb. It's really grab their concentration. They've been wondering about it.
What does the trust?
Usually it means like you're like engaged to be married.
Yeah.
Usually that's the most. It means like you made like a promise, but especially like a promise to be married. Alright, question number 7. Oh, you got it. Yeah, Tabby, what do we have for
E.
E? Do we agree? What else do we have?
Wait, D.
D. The majority who speaks? That's right. Pass it on.
Justin.
Justin? Just whatever you have.
D. B.
B? Agree? What else do we have? Any other D's? 2 people say D. Still no majority. Read the question for us.
After a passage 2 mentions front and Jones right through the tunnel of love and words.
Okay. Well, so where do we see this mentioned? Yeah, we see this mentioned around 25. So go ahead and read that sentence for us.
Fruit and John actually went to Coney Island and located the rank that the historians can document. Did they take a rank through the tunnel of love, as in the novel? Who knows? What if it
Okay. Yeah, so we see that maybe, I mean, we do know that they met, right? And it's telling us that they went to Coney Island together. Do you know what Coney Island is? Does anyone know? It's an amusement park. It's like going to Everland together, right? Did they go through the tunnel of what was in the novel? Who knows? Right? But what can we say about this? We're still not completely sure on this. What can we rule out? Can we cross off any answers?
B.
Okay, so we don't know if this is a historic account or why. It tells us. Who knows, right? Alright, so cross off B.
C.
Okay.
E.
Could it be E? Would this be nostalgic? Yeah, it's not. Yeah, this is not something that's like looking back in the past. Is he complaining about this? No, he thinks it's a good idea. He says, who knows, but what a fantastic idea. So he's not upset with regard to facts. So I guess D, commend a happy invention. What is the invention?
Tunnel.
Not the Tunnel of Love exactly. The Tunnel of Love is a real ride. But the invention is that the author imagined that these two people went on the Tunnel of Love together. Right? So what the author did in his book, he's commending. He's saying, oh, that was a really creative idea. I think invention means something more similar to idea in this case. That's the only way I could justify it. I know the wording is a little bit strange. Alright, let's look at question number 9. I forget, who answered question number 8? Did you get it right? No? Okay, so what about 9?
D.
Hmm?
D.
D? Do we agree? What else do we have? B? How many B's? The majority's right. Question you get to guess again?
B. Number 10.
10 is, sorry, E?
B.
B. How many B's? You got 3 B's for number 10? Unfortunately, it's wrong. Do you want to venture a guess?
I'm not sure. I was thinking it could be D or B.
Okay, so alright, let's take a look at this question. Justin, read the question for us.
The opening paragraph suggests that council would have agreed with which of the following statements.
Okay, well, so we know what's in the opening paragraph. The opening paragraph is not very long. So, let's just read some of it.
Traditionally, there's
Whatever. We just call it LDA. Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, whatever.
was indeed supposed to have been influenced by African neighbors' culture, but the council has denied this, affirming that although he was much interested in Iberian culture, he had no knowledge of labor or while he was at LD.
Okay, stop for a second. What does Iberian mean? There's a note about it. When you see a footnote, we can check.
Spain and Portugal.
Made up in Spain and Portugal. Okay, so he said, what did Picasso think? A lot of people said, hey, this looks like it's African, what you just made. And does he agree? No, he's like, I didn't know about African art. However, I have been studying Iberian art, which means Spanish and Portugal. So what's our answer? Okay. If they give you a footnote, it's usually there for a reason. Right, so those can be useful in helping you. All right, let's take a look at question number 11.
D.
D. Do we agree?
C.
The majority is right. C. Justin, what do you have for number 12?
D.
D. Agree? C. Any other C's? 2 C's, still not quite a majority. Read the question.
In the second paragraph, the author.
Okay, whatever it is, you got to find it in the second paragraph. Let's find some support for your answers.
Like line 12.
Okay, line 12. Yeah, Justin, read from line 12. It seems.
It is possible, therefore, that
Like, stop. What is a hypothesis?
Prediction.
Prediction or guessing. It seems possible. That is making a hypothesis right there. Okay. 13, what do we have?
D.
D? Do we agree? Any other D's? 2? What else do we have? Alright, we can go on still. It's asking us about... What do you... Well, no, sorry, read the question, Justin.
According to lines 36 to 41, Christopher first became acquainted with African art.
Find support for your answer. It's not very many lines.
I do like almost like line 39.
Yeah, line 39, he discovered for himself.
He discovered for himself almost accidentally while leaving the colors of his historic sculpture.
There we go. He found it in a gallery. That's our answer.
D.
D. Alright, Justin, I think you got that one right, didn't you? So pass it on to somebody else. 14B. Do we agree? 1. Yin-Yang and Tabby are those affirmatives. 3 B's. Unfortunately, it's wrong. So we need to take a look at this question. It's asking us about the phrase applied to. Let's take a look at this context. Can we read from maybe line 46, yeah, but several?
Several classes of 1978 incorporate African forms and possibly colors to such an extent that the title Negro period has hitherto been applied to his art of his time, including ODA.
B doesn't make sense.
Hmm?
B doesn't make sense.
The B doesn't make sense. What do we know about this, though? Originally, you know what? I think the answer to this is D. My answer, sorry, it is not. What did we say?
B.
B. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. D is the answer. I thought for a second that you guys had said that, and I was screwing it up. Do you see why that works? Do you use to designate? What does designate mean in this case? Sort of like, so in this case it means like it refers to. So this term is basically being used to refer to, it's designated sort of like the definition of all of that art. That's what they're calling it. Right. Let's move on to question number 15. We're still on Hannah, right? What do you have?
D.
D, do we agree? The majority is right. Sweet, we got another passage. Who's going to answer question number 16 for us?
C.
C, do we agree? Shaking our heads, good. What about 17? Who's next? Justin, 17?
E.
E, agree? That's right, pass it on. She just picked you, didn't you?
D.
You can't pick the person who picked you. So you can pick anybody except her. Didn't you?
Oh.
I just only 4 people in this class, so it's like they're not many people.
D.
Alright, D, do we agree?
Yeah.
That's right.
Hannah.
D, agree? What else do we have?
C.
C.
C? How many C's? Oh. Hannah, you're like, what? You're giving up on your answer already?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. It is C. Do we need to go over it? Okay. Ask about it later if you want. Question number 20. A, do we agree? That's right. Pass it on.
B.
B? 21B. Agree? Majority's right. Pass it.
D.
D? Agree? That's right. We're on a roll. You're guessing again? You have to. You got it right, but you can. No, D, fine. Whatever. Do we agree? Alright, let's just all answer the last question together. What do we have for 24?
E.
E? Sweet. It's also right. Alright, we're going to pause and going over this for like a little bit. Also because, let's see, Max, you didn't do this. Tabby, you didn't do the next section either. Anyone else not do it? What about the, what about all those what about all the sentence completion questions? Who did those? Raise your hand if you did all of them. No one else did. Hey, you suffered alone? Who else did any? Raise your hand if you did some of them.
I did exercise 4.
Yeah.
Up to exercise 4? Yeah. Okay.
Is this supposed to be up to?
No, it's all exercise B.
Yeah, we also have some stuff in B. So
That's
it was exercise. No, it was 2 to 4.
I think like 2 and 3.
Yeah.
You did 2 and 3, not 4. So it's not an even split. Alright, let's we're gonna go over all of this, but maybe we'll just go over it quickly. Alright, let's go over a little bit of the sentence completion part right now. Just for a change of pace. Those of you who did not do it, you can follow along. And the good thing about sentence completion questions is it doesn't take a lot of time preparing, so even if you didn't do it, you can probably still participate in the discussion of those that we went over. All right. What page is this on again?
64.
Alright, so we're talking about the level B stuff. Beginning with exercise 1. Alright, so again, raise your hand if you answered this whole section, these 20 questions. These 3 up here. Alright, so 2 is a majority in this case. If 2 people get this right, we're not going to talk about it. Everyone else, just follow along. Those of you who did it, what do we have for answer 1?
E.
E? Didn't do it? D? Okay. We need to go over this one. Alright, let's have Mina read the question for us.
In the 1920s, Hollywood became a magnet for men and women on the cutting edge. Blank artists genuinely excited by the possibility of the up-and-coming film medium.
Okay, so hold on a second. Do we know what on the cutting edge means? That's a big hint in this case. Cutting edge? No one knows? Cutting edge is usually used to describe, like, Max, are you keeping your head up a little bit? It's usually described to like new stuff, alright? Something like, you know, that's like really new and like first of its kind. And that's a big hint. So these people who are on the cutting edge, they're doing new things. B, innovative. Up and coming is another sort of hint. What about number 2?
D.
D? C? Tabby, you want to weigh in?
No, I thought it was like exercise 2 to 4.
It says 2 to 4 in the syllabus. But we actually didn't cover 1. We got a little bit behind, so 1 was part of it. I mentioned that. Okay. You didn't do this either? Alright. Do you want me to just, maybe I should just like,
Yeah.
just give you the answers. Alright, I'm going to call them off. I wanted to circle these, and if you got some wrong and you want to ask questions about it, you can. If you don't want to ask questions, you can just go home and look up the words. That's fine too. Alright, 3B.
Wait, number 2.
Oh, 2C. 3B. 4A. 5C, 6E, 7C, 8B, 9E, 10B, 11C, 12C, 13D, 14D, 15C, 16C, 17D, 18B, 19C, 20C. I'm just going to keep going through. I'm going to give you the answers to this next section too. Stay tuned. 1D, 2A, 3E, 4A, 5C, 6D, 7C, 8D, 9C, 10C, 11D, 12C, 13C, 14A, 15A, 16C, 17E, 18B, 19C, 20E. Alright, I'm going to stop right there for now because I feel like not many of us even got to 3. Actually, 2 of us did 3. Alright, and just one last section that I give you. No one did 4. You did 4. Okay. Don't worry about that. I might give you some time to do something else a little bit later while we do 4 as a group. Alright, so let's take a look at 3 though. I'm just going to coast right through that. Number 1 for exercise 3. 1B, 2C, 3C, 4C, 5A, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9A, 10E, 11C, 12C, 13A, 14B, 15C, 16B, 17D, 18D, 19D, 20B. Alright, deep breath. We're done with this for now. This is going to be a good chance for us. We're even on time. Let's do an exercise. Alright, so I'm thinking actually let's just move on. We might come back and do the 4th one on here, but let's move on to actually we have another section of these we have level C. Alright, if you pass all 3 of the level B exercises, it gets up a notch even harder. So I'm moving on to page 75.
It's harder.
Yeah, they get harder. Alright, so if you thought those ones are hard, alright, these ones are probably even more difficult, the level C ones. But this is now our third day, and this is not as if, like, it's not just because it's our third day. You guys have been studying SAT for a long time. We need to work on some difficult ones. Alright, so although these problems are a little bit more challenging, the vocab in these is a little bit more obscure, the general strategies remain the same. What do we want to do for these sentence completion questions? How do we answer them?
Predict.
We read it, we predict. How do we predict? We predict based on,
I
I don't know, first clues that we see in the sentence, right? Right? Clue words, right? Especially transitions, things that give relationships, sometimes synonyms, a lot of them are definitions. In terms of predicting what words mean, we might also have to predict some sort of meanings of words that we don't know. We can use our roots to help us. Sometimes we can use context to help us. What do we do if we have two blanks?
Determine the relationship. That's like opposite.
We can sometimes determine the relationship. We know these two words are going to be similar or they're going to be opposite in meaning. What other things can we try?
Insert.
We could try just inserting it and testing out just one of the blanks at a time to see if we can cross off some answers that reduces our effort. Alright, anyways, let's just do the best we can. So we're going to do this first exercise right now. There are a total of 20 questions in it. And what do you think? I don't know, 8 minutes? Does that seem reasonable?
No.
10? Let's say 8 minutes, and if everybody is still working after 8 minutes, then maybe I'll give you more time. Take up to 2 more minutes. Seconds. Stop. Raise your hand if you did not finish. I think so. Maybe. How close are we to finishing? Most of them? Don't worry about it. I think that's basically enough time. And that was 8 minutes. If you're doing it in this time, you're actually going to be in pretty good shape for the long passages. Let's go over it. Alright, so, I don't know how I want to do this. Let's just go over, let's just pick someone to be leading us for like the first 10, and then we'll pick someone else to lead us for the second 10. Who wants to start the number game?
1.
Oh. Why?
Okay, so Max is going to be leading us for the first half of these questions at least. What do we have for number 1?
B.
Agree? Agree? Yes, I see an agree. This side? Agree? It's a majority. That's right. 2?
C.
2 agree with Max. Okay. 4? I mean 3, my bad.
C.
C? Seems like a majority so far. Yes. 4.
E.
Agree? We have enough agreement. It's right.
B?
It is B. 4 is B. 5?
A.
Agree? What else do we have?
C.
Any other C's? Any other answers?
What is C?
Good question. Who knows what C means?
I knew everything else.
First of all, okay, so knowing everything else, well, what can we predict? Read the sentence for us, Max. For a young person?
For a young person, Winston seems remarkably where you'd expect someone his age to show a little more life.
So what do we predict?
No life.
Yeah, lacking in life or lacking in energy. Well, okay, maybe we don't know every word, so let's see if we can guess around it. Do we know any of these words?
Isn't sophomore like raised?
A little bit. It's actually, I mean, it's like when you think you know more than you are, sort of that you're actually still immature. Does that fit this idea of not showing much life? No. Vigorous? Definitely not vigorous. Vigorous is the opposite of what we want. It means like lots of energy. Alright, skipping over stodgy because we have no idea what it means. What does tidy mean?
Clean.
Clean. Does that fit? Sensitive? Does that fit? No, so stodgy is our answer. And it means, yeah, kind of like slow and old and like not moving quickly, not very active. As we would imagine it would. Alright, moving on to question number 6. Max, what do you have?
D.
D? Do we agree? I don't think I'm seeing
What D means?
Good question. Well, what other answers do we have?
C.
C.
Let's say C. C is right. What are conjectures?
Guesses.
Guesses. So facts over guesses. What are qualms while we're at it? Not exactly, kind of. Like, qualms are more like sort of complaints or issues with something. Things you don't like about something. Alright, moving on to number 7.
E.
Sorry, I said an E?
Yeah.
Do we have any other E's? Thank you, Hannah, for raising your hand big and high so I can see it. Did anyone else say E on this side? No? What else do we have? B? Anyone else say B? Tabby, Justin, what do you have? Difference, randoms? You don't know? Okay. Alright, then we need to go over this. This is a double blank one anyways. Alright, so I think E is the most popular guess. At least I saw 2 people who confidently said E. So let's read with E plugged in and see if it fits. Can you do that for us, Max?
Even former university Don DeLillo and William Gaddis, eminent novelists were notoriously shy when it comes to publicity.
Alright, does this fit? In this case, we have 2 blanks that are close together.
Yeah.
Could people be shy when it comes to publicity?
Yeah.
It makes sense. We should probably read the rest of the sentence just to make sure it fits. Have surrendered.
Surrendered to the exigencies of modern publishing and agreed to be the subjects of a magazine.
So if they're agreeing to be in magazines, would that be surrendering for them? Kind of. Right? Because we know that originally they're shy, they don't like publicity, but if they surrendered, they gave up and did it anyways. Yeah, the whole sentence fits pretty well. This is our right answer. Do I need to justify why any other answer is wrong? Okay. Let's move on then. Max, what do you got for number 8?
D.
D. D? Are there any other D's? Sweet, I see some hands, it's right. Number 9?
D.
D, do we agree?
B.
B? Any other B's or D's? We don't have a majority. What do we predict?
Hesitate.
Okay,
Or like,
probably. Yeah, hesitated, right? Or had trouble making this decision because we see that she's uncertain. Do we have a word that means something similar to that? Vacillated. Vacillated means you're like going back and forth. Oh, I don't know, I can't choose. Alright, so, moving on to number 10.
B.
B, do we agree?
Yeah.
It's a majority. It's right. Alright, as a first set of 10, Max, we can get someone else to relieve you. Who would you like to lead us for the second set of 10? Hannah? Okay. You didn't do most of the questions? How far did you get?
I did some and then just skip.
Alright, so if you skip it, we'll skip it. Which ones did you do? Did you do 11?
12.
Alright, fine. Let's just continue. Alright, so 11, Hannah skipped this. What else do we have for 11?
E.
E?
C.
C? We should go over it. Read the question for us.
Elizabeth Barrett, who's...
We're reading with E plugged in since that's the most popular answer. I got 2 E's.
Elizabeth Barrett, whose authoritarian father would give no interference or disagreement.
Alright, so would authoritarian work here? What does authoritarian mean?
I'm not authority.
Yeah, so like, kind of like strict in this case. Could she have a strict father who would brook no interference or disagreement with his plans? It means he wants to do things his way. Does that fit? Perfectly. Right, keep going. Eloped.
Eloped in order to extend his arbitrary.
Okay, well, eloped, what does that mean? Did we talk about this word yesterday? That might have been my other class. Does anyone know? Elope means like run away secretly to get married. Right, this is not a word that comes up. In fact, I guess you could technically run away together, maybe even without getting an official wedding, but still sort of running off together. Alright, that's what eloped means. Who is eloping in this case? Elizabeth. Yeah, she's not trying to extend her father's outcry rule. She probably hates it.
C.
So C is our answer. She's trying to escape it. Are we okay with this?
Yes.
Alright, what about number 12?
C.
C? Any other C's? That's right. Number 13?
D.
D? Any other D's? What else do we have?
C.
C? Any other C's? Got 2 C's. Max, what do you have?
C.
C? You have C also? We have 3 C's. It's a majority, it's right. We're on to, wait, 14? Or was that 13? I got lost. What was it? That was 14? 13. They were both. 13 is C. Alright, 14.
I didn't do this.
We didn't do 14? Who did 14?
C.
It is C. Alright, 15? need this one? A, do we agree?
Or B.
B?
B.
What does B mean?
Fake.
Fake. Is that what we want here?
Yeah.
Yes. Alright, 16?
B.
Any other B's? It's fine. 3, B is right. It's right. 17? E? Do we agree?
C.
Well, we should know what these things mean because they can come up in a lot of
C.
questions.
C.
What is a euphemism?
Saying a good way.
Saying in a good way. So what's the bad things that they're saying in a good way?
Firing.
Yeah, instead of firing, they're not saying firing, we're discharging. Instead they're saying, oh, we're just going to effect a separation. So that could be considered a euphemism. What is a proverb?
Saying.
Yeah, proverb's like a saying. Yeah, like the early bird gets the worm or that kind of thing. Alright, number 18. Do we agree?
E.
B or E? E. How many E's? Let's go look at this. Give it a 50-50 split. Read the sentence for us originally, Hannah. The TV.
The TV news knows precisely at the length of information and entertainment. For a while, it is not a still use of it is not a documentary either.
Okay, so I see a couple of categories here. Information, entertainment. This TV news magazine, is it one or both of these things? It's both. It's not exactly one, it's not exactly another, it's sort of in between. So what do we do? What's our best fit here? Do we know these words? Juncture, eclipse?
Isn't eclipse like when something covers?
Yeah, right. So usually we'll talk about like solar or lunar eclipse, like the lunar eclipse is when the shadow of the Earth goes in front of it and it like shines out and we can't see the moon.
It's like one circle. Doesn't it mean like one circle?
No, but it means one blocks out the other completely. It doesn't mean we can actually have both. It means one completely blocks it out. And yeah, it can be used figuratively too, as Megan was suggesting, just to like outshadow something. Right, so in this case, juncture is a better bet. Juncture means sort of like at the intersection between, like including a little bit of both, sort of in the middle ground between them. Right, number 19?
I don't know what I circled, but A.
A? Do we agree? What else? B?
I circled 3.
Okay.
D.
No.
D?
D.
Any other guesses?
D.
D? How many D's total? Still not. We should actually take a look at this one. Let's read it. We had 2 D's. That seems to be the majority. Let's read it with D plugged in and see if it works.
Even the long-living female mole rats are frequent. When the queen mole rat dies, several females suddenly recover their sexual and reproductive powers and battle one another to it.
Okay. Well, do we know what these words mean? Sika, does that fit here?
What's that mean?
Does it mean? Does anyone know what it means? Okay, well that's dangerous. Let's see if we can guess around it then. Let's see, does the second part work?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, they could suddenly recover them maybe. Alright, that's possible, but we can't say this answer is right. Let's see if we can work around the words that we don't know and find other things that make sense.
What about B?
What about B? Alright, well we can plug that in. Even though, can you read from there?
Even though non-breeding female mole rats are sterile, when the queen mole rat
Right,
dies,
so sterile, would that fit here? What does sterile mean?
can't reproduce?
Yeah, sterile means usually can't reproduce. Would this fit? Yeah, it fits perfectly. Alright, but again, if we didn't know that word, it could be a little bit hard. I think it means like, I guess those are like rotten or destroyed. Alright, anyways, moving on to question number 20. What is it that we have?
C.
C? Any other C's? Tabby, what do you have? Didn't do it. Justin? Didn't do it. The majority's right. It's C. What are vicissitudes?
Something bad.
Something bad?
Something like
We would
hard.
guess that, right? Humble makes a lot of sense, right? This person
Yeah.
started off as the emperor and then became a gardener at the end. So that fits very well. Vicissitudes mean like sort of changes in fate, right? Which fits well. He got kicked out. He couldn't be the emperor anymore. All right, enough on that. Of the 3 sections that we have on this test, right, our sentence completion, short paragraphs, and like the long passages, what is hardest for us? Are these the hardest ones? I know they don't take the most time or mental energy, but in terms of how well we do.
Long pass.
Long passage is hardest? Raise your hand if this is like the worst section for you. Raise your hand if the long passage is the worst section for you.
Or to read.
I mean, if it has 2 passages, it's not easier.
2 passages is easier?
Yeah, kind of.
Compare and contrast.
Like the dual passages?
Yeah.
That's easier? Do other people agree? I've had a lot of students who like hate the 2 passages.
The passages like the pupil that we just read,
Yeah.
I didn't like that. It was horrible.
Okay. Well, so actually, yeah, who liked that passage we just did, the pupil?
So,
The one about Pemberton or whatever and the tutoring or
I like science really good.
same.
science. I think science, I think for me at least, I think for most students the hardest ones tend to be the sort of narrative ones, the ones that
Yeah.
like come from the middle of the novel. What makes those so difficult?
So many characters.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of characters and we're usually jumping into it, like it's not the beginning.
Yeah, you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and it's hard to make predictions about it too because they usually don't have a clear thesis, right? So, I mean, what do we do when we have a passage like that?
You put context.
Okay. Context helps. They will usually put some helpful context in it. Sometimes they don't put enough context in, but it will usually tell you who the characters are. The other thing is you might have to just read those passages a little more carefully and try to budget that into your time. Skimming can work really well for the ones that have like a clear pattern with topic sentences, but on that kind of passage, not so much. Right. Again, though, you want to focus, the main things to focus on are the characters, the relationships between them, and how they feel. We had a lot of questions that were about, like, the tutor's feelings and his insecurity about how he looks. There were, like, 4 questions that were related to that. So, that kind of thing can help. Anyways, you know, we should take, like, our short break right now, like, 2 to 3 minutes, just kind of stretch it out. If you need to run to the bathroom, this is a good chance. Then when we come back, we're going to go over some more things.
Is all singular?
All?
Yeah, like all of the people. Is that singular?
No. This is for your writing homework, the other section. So I'm not gonna like, if you guys want to just like sleep or rest during this time, it's okay. But if you have questions you want to ask me about anything that we've done, I'm here. I'm also willing to answer questions about stuff. So I don't feel like I'm wasting your time. If you need a little bit of mental break, that's okay too. Your call. going to be continuous homework in this class.
And then are you going to have
Section C, like vocab. Yeah, we're going to have more of that for homework too. Maybe we can get a little more done in class together. That would be nice.
I can't stay after.
All right, let's get started again. I mean, we only have 45 minutes left at this point, so you'll get another break at that time. I want to first begin by going over the last section from the test that we did for homework. I think only 3 of us actually completed it, but everyone please follow along with it anyways. So I'm talking about the third section, I guess. Should be page 239. Alright, Max and Tabby eat into it, right? Okay, so we just need 2 people to have the majority. It doesn't really make sense to just go around. I'm just going to ask the 3 of you who did it to please weigh in with your responses. Number 1, what do we have?
A.
That's right. 2?
A.
Right. 3?
B.
4?
C.
5?
C.
Okay, we're going to go over 5. Let's have Max read the question for us.
Critics point out that far from moving back closer to its goal, the field of behavioral genetics is linked to the same problems that have always clicked on.
Okay. Alright, so what clues do we have? Do we see any keywords? Far from is 1. What does that mean?
Not.
Yeah, it's not, or contrast, right? It's going to be the opposite. So the moving blank closer to its goals is going to be sort of opposite to whatever we get at the end of this. Alright, so maybe we have to kind of start plugging in some of these words just to see what fits. What were the answers we said again? Who is
ABC.
A and C?
ABC?
ABC? What do we want to start out with? Who's confident? No one's confident. Alright, let's start out with A. Intermittently? Can we read it with intermittently plugged in, Max?
Critics point out that far from moving intermittently closer to its goals, the field of behavior genetics is composed of the same problems that have...
Okay, stop for a second. Intermittently, what does this mean?
Happening and stopping.
A little bit, some, not, yeah. So does that fit in this case? A little with A, but it doesn't quite fit so well with this next part. Right, saying that it's stuck with the same problems. Intermittent progress is not great progress. So it's not like clear opposites in this case. What if we plug in B?
Critics point out that far from moving dramatically closer to its goals, the field of behavior genetics is divorced from the same problems.
What does divorced from mean in this case?
Separated from
Okay, separated from what?
problems.
Separated from problems? Dramatically closer to its goals, separated from problems. Are these opposites?
No.
No, they're both positive things. So that can't be our answer. What about C?
Critics point out that far from moving inexorably closer to its goals, the field of behavior genetics is mired in the same problem.
Do you know what inexorably means?
Unstoppable.
Unstoppably. So unstoppably closer to its goals, mired in the same problems. Do you know what mired means here?
Sounds like stuck.
It means stuck. It's good. It sounds like stuck. It means stuck, right? So moving to, like always unstoppably closer to its goals, stuck in the same problems. Is that contrast? Yeah, that's our answer. All right, there are a lot of tricky words there. Let's move on to number 6. What do we have?
A.
Okay. Let's do the same thing. We'll start with A. Let's plug it in and just go through them all. Rebuff. This time, Tabby can read for us. A plugged in.
Rebuffed by his colleagues, the initially outgoing young researcher became increasingly withdrawn.
Okay. Initially outgoing, became increasingly withdrawn. Does this make sense in this case? What does outgoing mean as a person?
Social.
Yeah, social. Became increasingly withdrawn. What does withdrawn mean as a person?
Unsocial.
Antisocial. Would that be possible if he's rebuffed? What does rebuffed mean? Criticized or mocked. So could that make him withdraw? Probably. Alright. So let's move on to this next passage. That's a double passage, the type that Hannah says she likes, so they'll undercover it if you don't. What do we have for number 7?
A.
D? A? See? Great, we need to go over this. I don't want to spend too much time because it's hard for people who haven't read it to follow along, but let's have Tabby read the question by stating.
By stating that a 2-month-old baby confronts some of the profound problems of human race, the author means that the infant.
Okay, well, great. It tells us where to look, right? So maybe we should digest these lines a little more carefully. Max, will you read for us from line 1? The 2-month-old baby.
The 2-month-old baby has hardly aroused himself from the long night of his first weeks in this world when he is confronted with some of the profound problems of the race.
Does this tell us our answer?
No.
I see the part, but it doesn't really tell us, right? So what problems is the baby experiencing? What is he doing? We maybe have to read on a little more to figure it out. So keep going. We invite him.
We invite him to study the nature of reality, to differentiate self and non-self, and to establish useful criteria in each of these.
Okay, so basically we're making him sort of study the world, nature, right? Understand yourself and others, and like to find different categories. What is that most similar to? D, E. What do we think?
It says like nature.
Nature of reality. Reality is a physical thing, right? Self and non-self. D is our best answer here. What's the problem with E? Communicate. He's not communicating yet. He's beginning to say, this is my hand, this is part of my body. Oh, that thing is not me. Right? It's very young babies are talking about starting to like perceive things. Right? But not communicating yet. Alright, anyways, D is our answer. Let's move on to question number 8. What do we have?
A.
A. The majority is right. 9.
C.
B.
C. C, B, C. The majority is wrong. We need to take a look at it. Can we have Tabby read the question?
The author of passage 1 apparently believes that during infancy learning begins.
Well, we kind of already discussed about this a little bit. Yeah, senses. Again, like kind of feeling things. Right? We see this in line 16 and 17 especially. What he's using is his sensory organs, his hands, his mouth, and primitive memory apparatus. We hand this question out? Okay.
For that
Yeah?
one. Oh, I thought that was talking about the sign.
In this case, the his refers to baby. Unlike the scientist who has all this lab equipment, the baby is just using mouth and hands. It's the only tools he has. Alright, so let's move on to question number 10. What do we have?
D.
B, D, D. The majority is wrong, so we need to go over this too. Max, read the question.
10.
Yeah.
The account in passage 1 of how an infant learns to discriminate between his own body and the body of others suggests that.
Oh. What clues can we find? Explore your answer. I told you that C is... What is it most people say?
D.
D? I said that D is wrong. What does he say about this? Take a look at take a look at some clues here. Let me give you one clue. Let's read from line 18. Can we have Tabby read for us from 18?
At 2 months, as we have seen, he recognizes an object.
Alright, stop right there. We see a step here. At 2 months, this is where the baby has evolved to. Then we see a little bit later on, line 25. Read from line 25, then gradually.
And gradually, in the weeks to come, the association of...
Okay, so we see then gradually, step by step, top of the next paragraph.
Meantime, the infant is conducting a series of complicated...
Okay, series of complicated, so kind of explaining it. All of these hints are leading us towards an answer.
Isn't this just about how the baby discriminates between the body and other body?
It's, I think, this whole thing that he's actually, like if you read in line 40, this is what they're talking about. It takes him some time, in fact, to recognize his own hand at sight. The whole passage is really him sort of learning to, the baby learning to understand himself versus the other. The whole paragraph kind of relates to that. It's not just the first paragraph.
I said D because like at 42, it says like in the first group and then in the second group.
Okay, but these are not different theories. These are experiments. Who's conducting these experiments?
Scientists.
Nope. takes him some time to recognize his own hand. The baby. Alright, so these are not different theories about babies. These are like, he's using the word experiments. Probably the baby doesn't speak. The baby doesn't think of them as experiments. But, oh, touching this, oh, I feel it. That's an experiment, basically, for the baby. Right? So these are steps in the baby learning how to perceive the world. Alright, our best answer is B. Are we okay on this now? Alright, moving on to question number 11. Majority is right. 12.
D.
Majority is right. Majority is right. Majority is right. 15. 15 is a hard one. Majority is right. 16. Majority is right. 17. Majority is right again. 18. Majority is right. 19. D, B, B. 2 B's. Majority is right. Alright. So we made it through a lot of stuff. Does anyone have questions about anything that's gone over today? Alright, think about it. I will give you time to ask more questions later on. You should be looking over the homework. I know we don't cover every question if the majority gets it right, but that doesn't mean you personally understand every answer. So look over the ones you got wrong. Make sure you can see why. If you can't, you are welcome to ask questions about this next time we meet. Since I don't have any questions now, we're going to move on to some other stuff. So I guess we're going to do another section. We have to get through some more of this vocab practice, these sentence completions. Let's just plow forward with that. The more we do tonight, or the more we do today in class, the less you have to do for homework tonight. This is good news. Okay? So let's go back to those sentence completion questions that we have. Yeah, type C. Sorry, what page is it on here? 70, okay, 77. Alright, I'd like to break this into smaller chunks. I think last time I gave you 20, that was like a lot to do in one sitting. I mean, not to test you with much more, but let's do 10 at a time. We're going to do the first 10. For those first 10, we're going to do it in 4 minutes. Those 4 minutes are starting already. A minute left.
Is it up to 10?
Yeah, just a minute. Alright, let's stop where we are. Actually, like you said, you could have a little more time, but it looks like most of you are done, and I don't want to eat up the whole class's time on this. Let's go over these. We need someone to lead us, so 1.
4.
I had a couple of 4s. Set. Who's it for? These 2. Okay. Alright, so it looks like Megan's going to be leading us. Everyone else, please speak up clearly or nod visibly if you agree. If you disagree, don't be afraid to speak up. Let's talk it over. What do we have for number 1?
A.
Agree? I'm getting nods, yes. 2.
A.
Agree? What does monochromatic mean?
One more color.
It's a good use of our roots to get this. We probably don't have a lot of words on this list, right? But maybe we don't need to. Let's move on to the next one, number 3.
B.
Agree? 4.
E.
E. Agree?
That's.
What else do we have?
What is this?
Hmm?
What is this?
Good question. Does anyone know? Thick-skinned means like insensitive, right? It's sort of mean, like not like aware of others' feelings. So let's plug them in. What was it? We said E. Can you read it? You know with E plugged in.
Was he so thin-skinned then to disregard any small insult at
Is it D?
What?
D?
Well, does he make sense? To disregard means to ignore. Ignore an insult?
No.
That's actually, yeah, not really going to make sense in this case. What about D? Max says D.
Yeah.
He resents it, he suggested, yeah, he gets really angry about it. Yeah. That's right. Let's move on to question number 5.
D.
D? That's right. 6?
C.
Agree? Okay. 7?
C.
How many C's for 7? Yes. 8.
A.
Agree? No? What else do we have? How many A's? What else do we have? We seem very uncertain about this. D, thank you for sharing your answer. We're going to go over this question anyways based on this clear there's uncertainty about it. Mina, can you, well, let's read it. Let's read it. And you can even plug in your answer if you want. What was it? You said A?
Yeah.
Okay, let's plug in A first and test it out.
In judging the degree of his skill, the question remains whether he acted out of purely benevolent motives or whether he acted with thoughts of his own fame.
Okay, so hold on a second. I see some clue words here. One big word I see is an or. Right? Whether he or. So these two things, similar or different?
Different.
Very the opposite. So acting out of purely benevolent motives, what's benevolent mean?
Good.
Kindness, yeah. So does he have kind motives or did he act with thoughts of his own fame in mind? Does it fit? It kind of makes sense, actually. I mean, but it's not exactly the opposite. His own fame, maybe we think like his own benefit would make more sense in this case. Right, so it's not a perfect fit, it's a little awkward. What other words do we want to check out?
D.
D? Okay. Purely mercenary motives? Do we know what mercenary means?
Wanting to gain
Profit.
like money.
Yeah, exactly. So, profit, like profit motives, or with his own profit in mind. Are those opposites? I mean the same thing. Well,
Is it B?
let's plug in B. Disinterested motives, what does disinterested mean?
Not interested.
Not exactly.
Not really.
Unbiased. Disinterested, this is important, uninterested versus disinterested, those two words are commonly mistaken for one another. Disinterested means unbiased, you don't have any sort of like personal reason. Uninterested means you just don't care about it. A judge should be disinterested, but he should never be uninterested. Alright, so unbiased, or he has thoughts of his own advantage. Are those opposites?
Yeah.
Indeed.
They are. So B is our answer.
Mm.
All right, number 9. What do we have? C. Agree? That's right. And number 10.
Mm.
Any other D's? The majority says D. It's right. It seems like the double ones are giving us a little bit more problems than the single ones these days. Hey, anyways, let's do one more set. We're going to get to the end of this at least. Maybe even if it's more than that. Let's do the next 10. Same deal. I'm going to give you guys 4 minutes. So you can do another 30 seconds. Alright, stop. Let's go over it. Who just led us? Does it mean him? You can start the game.
1, 2, 3.
Okay. Max will lead us this time. Alright, so Max, what do you have for number 11?
B. B.
B. Does anybody else have B? That's right. Pass it on. Not pass it on, I'm sorry. Let's move to the next question. 12. E? Agree? How many E's? One other? What else do we have?
C. C.
C. Any other C's? Okay, we're gonna go over this one. Max, read the question for us. It was only.
It was only the first day of summer vacation, and these notes were already planned by the constant plan.
Okay, what do we predict without looking at our answer choices? What kind of word might fit in this blank?
Stressed.
Yeah, okay, stressed, annoyed, right? These kids are screaming all the time. His nerves are probably not going to be in good condition. Well, how many of these words do we know? Do we know any word that means, like, maybe could mean stressed or strained or damaged? Frayed does, in fact, mean that. Right? Frayed especially is something that means sort of damaged in terms of something that's supposed to be whole or intact. Like if you take like a rope, right, and you know if you start pulling at the ends, it can sometimes come apart. Sometimes this happens to your shoelace or something. It's and suddenly you have like 2 and 3, and it's like falling apart. That's what frayed means. Frayed nerves are not good. All right, what does replete mean, by the way? Well, we're at a couple of us said C. Does anyone know? Can we guess?
I thought it meant like used stuff. Like finished.
Well, my guess like it means that deplete means to use up, right? But replete we might think could actually mean sort of the opposite, full. All right, so let's move on to question number 13.
D.
Agree?
Yeah.
How many D's is this? This one is wrong. We need to go over this despite the majority. All right, now I know we see gambling, casino. We think lucrative makes sense. Lucrative, what does lucrative mean?
Profitable.
Profitable, but that's actually not what the clues in the sentence give us. We can't infer that it was the most profitable gambling place. There could be others. What does it tell us about this place? Outglittering its competitors. What do you think that means?
C.
B?
C.
C? What does ostentatious mean?
Isn't it like fancy?
Yeah, fancy, showing off. Outglittering fits that pretty well. Alright, so anyways, let's move on to 14. What do we have?
B.
B? Agree? That's right. 15?
E.
Sorry, B or E?
B.
B. Do we agree? Good. 16.
B.
B? Agree? This time, just 1 or 2. I don't think it's a majority. What else do we have?
A.
A? Any other A's? Let's go over this question. Max, read it for us. Because we have
completed our analysis of the major components of the proposed project, we are free to devote the remainder of the session to a study of the project's details.
Okay, so what do we predict for this? Are there any clues we have? Right, so what have we already completed in this sentence? We already finished
Major components.
the major components of the project, the important stuff. So we're free to spend the rest of our time studying the
Small details.
small or unimportant. Yeah. So what does scrupulous mean? Careful. Careful. A person can be careful. Right? The details cannot be scrupulous. Scrupulous is a person who's being very diligent or careful in their work.
A.
So that doesn't work. Lurid. Do we know what that means?
What's that mean?
Does anyone know? Does anyone know any of these other words?
Isn't learn like small and
No, it's more like sort of like compelling or shocking.
incidental? Doesn't
Incidental means not that important. It means sort of just like, whatever, not really related to anything, not that consequential. Alright, so that's our best bet in this case. Alright, number 17.
C.
Do we agree? That's right. 18.
B.
B? Agree? Okay. 19?
A.
Agree? Wait, hold on a second. I go back to 18. We said B, right?
Yeah.
Stop for a second. I was looking too. Disagree. Everyone agreed that I disagree. Let's go back to take a look at 18 again. We need to read through that. Max, can you read it for us? Determined to hire?
Determines to hire employees on the basis of their merits, rather than on the basis of their family connections, transfer of fees to private nepotism, and other forms of favoritism and the engagement of the workers.
Okay. Alright, so what clues do we have?
use word.
Maybe use? We're thinking use? Well, yeah, I mean, so he's, how is he doing this? How is he hiring them?
Fairly.
He's higher than fairly. Exactly. Wait, sorry, did we see, what did you say originally?
B.
I'm sorry. Okay. No, I was looking at it quickly. I had the wrong thing circled, actually. So first you guys all said B, and I was like, no, my thing says C. Wait, did I actually do it? And then I look at it again. It is prescribed. What does prescribed mean in this case?
Support.
Yeah, sort of support or like accept using. I'm sorry about the confusion. Alright, so we were all right. That is good. What about 19?
A.
Okay, this is one we need to go over, though. So, please read it for us, Max.
Just as sloth is the mark of the idler, then get the mark of
Okay, so we see a pattern here, right? Do we know what sloth and idler mean? Sloth is laziness. It's considered a bad quality, laziness. Idler is someone who is, well, if sloth is the mark of the idler, idler must be lazy. It means the same thing, right? Idler is like a lazy person. So this other thing, the blank is the mark of the blank. They must be related. They have to be related. The first A is going to be a trait that the second A is the B, the second one is going to have. So, wanderlust, trespasser. Do we know what these words mean? Wanderlust. What does wanderlust mean? Wanderlust? We can probably put this together. What does lust mean?
Desire.
Desire? Wander? Desire to wander. Someone who has wanderlust is like bored in their location, they want to go out and see more places. Could this be the mark of the trespasser? What is a trespasser?
Illegally crossing.
Illegally crossing somewhere they shouldn't be? That's not quite the same thing. Maybe it could be the mark of the traveler or the adventurer, but not of the trespasser.
Is it B?
Well,
Yeah.
obsequiousness. Do you know what that means? It means like sort of submissiveness, like always doing what others tell you. Always following orders. Toady is someone who always follows orders. Servant, kind of. Does it make sense? Yes. Do you need to know any of these other words? Okay, then let's move on to the final one. What do we have for number 20?
A.
A? Agree?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Alright, let's see, we have a little more time. I can give you two options right now. One is we can move forward and we can do another one of these exercises. I know it's kind of draining to keep going through it, but if we do it now, it's less homework. The other option is I can give you the next 5 or 10 minutes or so to look over some of the problems we've done today, problems we've done yesterday, find the ones you don't understand and ask questions about them. I'm not just going to let you sleep, that's for certain. Either way, we're doing some kind of work. Any preference here? Raise your hand if you want to do more of these sentence completion questions now. Raise your hand if you want to spend time reviewing old problems and answering questions. Ooh, it's an even split, meaning you don't care? You're going with review?
Yeah.
Alright, the majority has spoken. But I suppose if you want to do this instead, we're not going to do any more of this in class now, this is going to be homework. So if you want to get started on these sentence completion questions yourself, you may. Alright? If you would prefer to use this time, those of you who want to spend time reviewing, please start reviewing. I'm here. We have at least 10 minutes left. And I'm answering any questions I get. I do not want to see you doing work for another class. Alright, so if I see you're opening up to like your writing section or your essay.
How about vocab?
No, this is not vocab time. This is not free study hall. This is like guided practice. Because we finished everything we need to do today, this is guided practice on the extra stuff, the stuff that you may be missing. Is your homework? Okay, the homework that you have for tonight, we need to finish the level C for these sentence completion ones. There's 2 more of those left. And also there's another test, this test 2. Test 2 in the same book, we did test 1 yesterday. If you're here in the afternoon, we'll be doing it then. And for those of you, one more thing, for those of you who did not do level B, exercise 4, the last sentence completion one for level B, that's also part of your homework. We're not going to review that today, we're going to review it tomorrow because only one person did it, it doesn't make sense to. I should know, everyone, I really expect you to do your homework this time. Alright, I feel bad. Hannah's second day in the class is her first homework last night. She's the only one who did it all. She's not going to do it tonight. I know that because she's going to think, oh, no one else did it, so I don't have to also. We're setting a bad example. No, we all have to do the homework. Are you using this to look up words?
Yeah.
Can I turn this one?
Off.
Off?
That's what
Yeah, gladly. This? Nope. You don't just have to be doing sentence completion too. You can be asking me questions about the tests that you took last night, you know, like the whole practice test 1, the long passages, anything. Use this time well. We don't get all that much time to ask me questions, unfortunately, so this is a good opportunity.
Sometimes the worst isn't coming
Sometimes it might not. There's usually another way you can search for it, maybe a better dictionary, or maybe just because like it has a different ending. Right, if you search for this without the LY. Right, I would advise you though, for those, I see a lot of, right, you like half of the class right now has like looking up words in dictionaries. Right, if you want to be looking up words for like the old stuff, like you got a sentence completion question wrong, and we didn't talk about it because the majority got it right, and you want to figure out what it means, use it to look up old stuff. But when you're taking the new one, if you're doing the new stuff, I don't suggest that you use it because it's going to get you in a bad habit. Right, so it's fine if you want to use it to review, but when you do the new stuff, try it without first to see what you can guess, because on the real test you're not going to know a lot of words. And the strategy of how to guess around unknown vocab is really important to build up. A note on that word we're looking up, unanimous, just in terms of like notes. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Cut yourself. This is a good example in terms of roots. Unan often means one, like united or just like bring together, right? Or anam is related to spirit or mind. So unanimous means like of one spirit. Basically, everyone is in agreement. Since I'm only here for another like 3 more minutes, if you have any questions, ask them now. If you don't, that's okay too. Makes my job nice and easy. last call. Any questions? All right. Well, we just have another 2 hours. I guess you guys can take a little break. 10 minutes. I think Sam's going to come in and you guys are going to be ready in class.
That much. They all come out quickly in Korea. In South Africa, it takes 20 minutes for the food.
It takes like all an hour.
Korea, it's all within 5 minutes. Everything comes out quickly.
True.
Should I go get a gun? It takes like 1 minute. Do it like here, like a face.
When's our break?
I think it's like 10 minutes. Our like we can create like a face or. 우동? I know where they have udon. I know like 2 places. 질린다 진짜. 3일째 무슨 요일이지? 화요일이야? 화요일이야?
너는 근데 가잖아.
야 미술원 가는 것도 힘들어.
진짜 안 됐어. So boring.
아 그런가?
진짜 재밌어.
아니야 스트레스 받았어. 은근 다닌 지 얼마 안 돼가지고. 내가 미술 전공하는 거지. 원래는 절대 생각이 없었는데 요 근래에 재밌긴 하지. 근데 또 그것도 막 머리 써야 되고 하다 보면 쿨 이런 거 만들면 너무 대부분 난 한국이 좋지. 근데 중국 가면 그냥 중국 사람들은 막 무조건 중국어로 얘기하는데 아주 자신감 있지.
타이도 영어를 못해. 진짜 너무 답답해.
맞아.
타이도 영어를 못해.
막 그냥 우리한테 와서 그냥 중국어로 얘기를 해.
백화점으로 이렇게 딱 여기 들어가 있는 거야. 그럼 여기서 사장님 하고 아니면 전단지만 주고 막.
그래가지고 막 한국인인데요 얘기를 하자면 뭐로 그래도 중국어로 계속 얘기해. 그리고 내가 그때 MU에 갔을 때 외국인들이랑 말했을 때 그 외국인들 완전 막 사진 찍고 그러잖아 친구.
진짜?
그막 장인공원 갔을 때 사람들이 지나가고 있는 사진 찍고 외국인들 외국인도 한 명 있었거든.
터키 갔을 때 나한테 사진 찍다가 동양이 처음 본다고.
터키는 아시아 아니야?
근데 처음 보면서
Can you read number 1?
The captain standing on the bridge of the ship. He had never seen such a strong wind. Oh, here's it. See?
Am I crazy here? Wait, are we going to practice test? Oh, we're going to practice A. Ah, yes. Brain just stop there. One of those things. Yes. Yeah, C is the correct answer. Everyone good with C? Yeah. Alright, number 2. But you missed having.
what can beat the thrill of kicking a soccer ball past the goalie for a score and to hear applause from the crowd? See?
C, yeah. What's the error here?
2 here.
Yeah, but what's our, like our name of the thing? Like, is it
Tense.
tense parallelism? Right, it's faulty parallelism, right? That's what you want to look out for. Okay. Number 3.
The film's special effects and gripping story give audiences a thrill. E.
E for number 3. It says
Right.
A
No.
is the answer, right?
Yeah,
Problem with
yeah,
E is
give
pronoun.
everybody.
It fails to refer specifically to a noun. It gives a thrill watching. So A gives audience a thrill. All right. Number 4.
To celebrate the 100th anniversary of the college, honoring those alumni who had graduated 50 years ago. D.
D. Yeah. Everyone good with D? Any other answers? Okay. And number 5.
Oh. Professor Bromley, the first historian to reveal the story of the man in 95, doing it appropriately in conjunction with the
Bicentennial. What's bicentennial mean?
Every 2 centuries.
Well, yeah, 200 years, right?
Isn't it half What's that?
No, that's what's not centennial, just 50. Sesquicentennial. Wait, what's quintennial? Yeah, quintennial. Centennial. Yeah, you're thinking of the difference between bi-weekly and bi-monthly. Oh my God, I hate these things. Yeah, because bi-weekly is twice a week, which would be, you cut it in half. But bicentennial is every 200 years.
If you say biannual.
Biannual is twice a year. Like bi-monthly.
Twice a year.
Yeah. So bi-weekly, twice a week. Bi-monthly, twice a year. Biannual. Bi-weekly, twice a week. Bi-monthly, twice a month. Bi-annually, twice a year, and so on. Every 2 years. It's just every 2 years. Thank God. Yeah. Or you would say twice annually. All right. Anyway, I wish I hadn't opened that can of worms. What's the answer? C isn't correct because you have a shift in the verb tense. Cast in the past tense. So yeah. We're looking for number 5. I'm sorry, number 4. Oh, 5. This is my problem, yes. 5 is D. Sorry. Alright, D. Yeah, it's Tonto. It does it. Oh yeah, of course, because we have the cast. Okay, number 6.
Lee and Michelle were among the players chosen for the all-country field hockey team. Their performance is having been exceptional. D.
D. It's a sentence fragment.
Oh.
So
E.
E. Yes, very good. Their performance hadn't been. If it said their performance had been exceptional or something like that, or because they had an excellent performance that season, then it'd be okay because of the semicolon. All right, number 7.
The White House Chief of Staff, in addition to the First Lady, increasingly influenced the administration's policies. A.
A? Okay, this is the tricky thing, right? The White House Chief of Staff, remember, throw away the thing in the commas for a minute, right? The appositive statement. So, increasingly, get rid of that. The White House Chief of Staff, influence. So, Chief of Staff, you know what the Chief of Staff is? That would probably help you, wouldn't it? The Chief of Staff is like, the President has some advisors, right? And they're his staff. And the top person is the Chief of Staff. So it's one person. So for that reason, it needs to be E, influences, because it's that guy. I don't know who the guy is right now. It was Rahm Emanuel before, someone else now. All right. Number 8.
Most of the trees looked on the verge of dying, or as if already they had died. As though they had already died.
Yeah, exactly. D. Yeah. All right. Number 9.
E.
Well, yeah, read it through real quick. I know you're excited. E for excited, but
Although the speakers never having reached their audience, they could express themselves plainly or in a down-to-earth manner. E.
E. Yeah. Very good. Number 10.
If you ever purchased the house today, we would have saved like B.
B. Yeah. And that's just proper usage of the subjunctive tense. All right. Next one. 11.
Man flies to Mars will not be planned until the far distant future because it requires close knowledge that is yet to be developed. C.
C. Right. Pretty easy one. All right. Number 12.
Written by William Goldwyn, the novel Lord of the Flies tells what happens when a group of schoolboys get stranded on an uninhabited island. C.
C. What should it be? Not get stranded, but
Get stranded.
get stranded. Have any of you read Lord of the Flies?
Yeah.
Great story. It shows kind of how terrible we all are on the inside and we don't know it. All right, number 13.
Using special lighting techniques, food stores subtly enhance the color of produce on their shelves.
Produce.
Produce.
You know what produce is?
Like groceries.
Not just groceries, specifically. It's like your cabbage, lettuce, tomatoes, peppers, onions, all the fresh stuff is produce.
On their shelves. Thereby attracting consumers, encouraging impulse buying, and most important, it creates the appearance of freshness and wholesomeness. D.
Yeah. And what's the error?
Creating
Yeah. But what's the problem though?
like
Parallel.
Yeah, parallelism. Very nice. All right, next one. 14.
While looking around the infirmary, I observed many other patients which happened to be suffering from the same upper respiratory infection as I. B.
B, right? Not which, but
Who?
who. If we're talking about animals, which or who?
Which?
No, I'm encouraging you. We're starting a revolution in this class. All right, who? We're not calling our animals things anymore. Actually, you shouldn't get me saying that on tape. It's probably not good. All right. Why is your teacher encouraging them to use deliberately wrong grammar? All right, 15.
There's no doubt that the safe term contains variable tools to get next to be without difference one or another because the term might well be.
B. Yeah. What needs to be changed? To what should it be changed? So not would have been, but
Should.
Has.
it needs to be will have to be. Alright? Because it's in the future. Remember, would have been is past subjunctive. Right? You know what subjunctive tense is? Yeah? No? Alright, give me an example of a subjunctive tense sentence.
if
Yeah.
it snows tomorrow, I will something.
Yeah, it's like a hypothetical situation, right? So if I were rich, I would buy 12 black chairs. That would be it. Sounds like a great thing to do. Just, yeah, watch out for that. And it's very often on the SAT they confuse future and subjunctive tense deliberately, right? Or, Justin Bieber, I'm a big fan of his. He has an excellent song called Boyfriend. Now, I can't stand listening to this song because he uses the grammar wrong. It says, if I was your boyfriend, I'd never let you go. And the problem is, that would actually be past tense. I think he's trying to say, if I were your boyfriend, right? If I were your boyfriend, please, Justin, I hope you will say this to me, he would never let me go. Okay? So, watch out for that, right? And this is something I hear all the time, though. People make this grammar mistake all the time. They say, was. If I was you, I'd be quiet right now, right? So it's if I were. And same sort of thing. Past tense, if I would have been there. So just watch out for that. All right, number 16.
Experts in modern life say that there is a closer relationship between characters with many in sharks than had been previously thought. B.
B. What should it be? Not with, but and. Very nice, right? Between X and Y. Kind of barracuda. All right, 17.
The threat to suspend students caught using cell phones during class without permission seems like an overreaction to the problem because the principal is ordinarily sensitive and level-headed.
There's no error. What does level-headed mean? His head's like perfectly straight, like level. In a way, it is kind of like that. It means he's calm, cool, rational, that sort of thing. Not easy to anger. All right, next one.
Ray Bradbury and Isaac.
You've never seen Ray Bradbury? Fahrenheit 451?
No, I know.
You know Isaac Asimov. We read that story.
Isaac Asimov stands side.
Remember the story we read?
Yeah.
You better,
Yeah,
or
I
else.
remember.
The last question, right?
Yes, good man.
Stand side by side as two of America's greatest science fiction writers, but the latter, having written more than 500 books, is by far the more prolific. D.
Yeah, exactly, right. If we're comparing two things, right, we might need to say more. Okay, next one, 19.
Reflecting on the signs of our national debt, one might well ask yourself how the most powerful nation on earth could have gotten itself into such a mess. C.
C, right? It needs to be
Oneself.
oneself. However, in your writing, when you're writing essays, avoid using one and oneself and all of that, right? It's generally, it just sounds pretentious. So avoid that. I know what you're saying, then I should use you. No, just avoid pronouns and generals. Okay, it's just a general stylistic tip for you. Don't use one. Sometimes you have to, but avoid it. All right, number 20.
Achievements as well as the failures of the space program has been a matter of contention for many years as many interest groups compete for a share of the federal budget. E.
All right. X through as well as the failures of the space program. So we have the achievements, has been. Yeah, very good. So that's what I'm saying, though. These sort of parenthetical statements, these side things. Get rid of them and see how it looks. If it makes sense, then you can see there's no error. All right, 21.
Being lost in the mountains of Colorado for 2 days as a boy, Dave is always careful to take a detailed map with him when he sets out venturing the wilderness.
Okay, here's the thing. Because it happened in the past, right? Being lost in the mountains of Colorado for 2 days as a boy, right? Being is present tense, right? Being that he is the tallest man in America, he always wears large shoes. But since it happened in the past, you can say having been lost, right? So having been lost in the mountains of Colorado for 2 days as a boy, Dave is always careful. And in general, like, again, this isn't the 99% strategy, but I've noticed this, like, very, very frequently. Whenever they have being in a sentence, that's the error. Just, it's always something wrong with the word being. So just keep it as a rule of thumb. Like, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but just take a look at it. You might see that it's the wrong one. All right, 22.
Many students who successfully use computers in the bettering of vocabulary for the SATs find that computer provides limited help in the improvement of writing skills.
Yeah, that one's pretty easy. I'm a bettering. I try to better myself every day. Betterment. Self-betterment. 23.
The FBI agents choose not to arrest the suspect in the bank that afternoon, but instead arrested him at the airport before he is boarding a flight to D.
Yeah, and what should you change it to?
Before he boarded.
Boarded, right? Because everything's just simple past. Chose not to, arrested him, boarded a flight, right? It's all happening in simple past tense. All right, 24.
Although it appears cold and forbidding on the surface, the Caspian Sea, the greatest of all inland seas, teems with aquatic life in its depths. Where?
Yeah. Let me ask you a quick question. Just want to test you here. Could I say something like this? Although it appears cold and forbidding on its surface, the Caspian Sea... Oh, crap. I don't know how to say this. Anyway, can you have but or though when